Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Helen Millar and this is Head to Heart Living, how to live a life less from fear and more from love. And I am so excited today to introduce you to, you may already know about her, and if you don't, it's your lucky day, Rachel Elnaugh, whose paths crossed back in 2014 for me in Glastonbury. And when everything got a bit crazy in 2020, I was really delighted to see that Rachel was sharing the most inspiring, engaging, informative videos about another perspective about what was going on the planet. And those videos have reached a swathe of people who were feeling really isolated and alone. But Rachel has not just stuck with the level of the problem, but actually has moved into a huge solution and an area. And what I want to speak to Rachel about today is about our connection to nature and the land and living by nature's principles, and what we can practically do to start building new communities and new ways of being on and with the earth that are paving the way for the most extraordinarily beautiful future, rather than getting fed up, to use a nice term, with what we're watching unfolding and falling apart and dismantling. And especially at the moment, we're at the end of September 2022. Look at, knowing that this financial shift is changing, but it's not easy as to be in it as it changes, and what we can do practically to resource ourselves so that we feel stable and secure no matter what is crumbling around us. And so with that, Rachel, ex-Dragon's Den and entrepreneur and phenomenal earthwalker, thank you for coming to speak with me today. And I guess to start off with, what's at the top of your heart in where you're feeling you're at the moment with life and the land?
Wow. Well, thanks, Helen, for that introduction. Yeah, I've actually just come from a very intense weekend in Snowdonia, doing some shamanic journeying, after one of those incredible retreats, they take you into just such a high level. And so I'm in that integration at the moment of really in that very high vibration. And I just, we do so much in the digital world across Zoom, but there's nothing quite like sitting in circle with an amazing group of people with live music and singing and meditating together, praying together, chanting together, and yeah, just being on the land. And so that's kind of where I'm at in the integration of that, of kind of wanting to create that kind of vibration in every moment of every day. Really, that would be the perfect life for me.
Beautiful. And thank you for bringing those vibes into this conversation. I forgot that's what your weekend was doing. And I think I guess slightly the opposite. I was in London yesterday leading workshops on mindset for a company, a really holistic company. And what I'm feeling is there's more and more appetite I'm seeing the lines blur between what was potentially considered hippie or woo or spiritual, and then like the business world or the corporate world or work or the city life or whatever those divisions might be perceived as, and actually realizing that we need the integration, and that really feeling that this lifetime is the time of that integration, so that it's not seen as something you hide and you do at the weekend, but actually there is a deeper understanding and appreciation, or even just respect for different practices and different ways of healing the body, healing the mind, finding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because, obviously over the years as a dragon, in my dragon persona, entrepreneurial persona, I've been invited to speak at a lot of corporate events, and I've always dropped in metaphysical or sort of law of attraction type teachings. And there's always a divide. You notice a divide in the audience. Some people are like, yeah, oh, wow. And others kind of fold their arms and back, usually the men. And so it's really interesting. And a lot of people say, oh, you need to speak this in a way that your audience is going to get it, like translate it into some kind of language that they're going to understand. But to me, it's so important to be authentic and to speak from the heart, because you don't know what language other people speak. So how could you possibly translate what you're feeling into someone else's language? It kind of requires a huge amount of judgment. So I've always spoken my truth. And I think that was really good training, speaking my truth to audiences, regardless of who they were. To then do all those videos, just speaking my truth about what was unfolding. So it's very good practice just to speak truth from the heart without filtering it through the mind, trying to get in the way and trying to translate it into what you think someone else can receive, you know.
And I think absolutely, and I think we're at a time now where those arms are crossing less and less, and
Yes.
people are being more open. And I'm noticing, I think people were so either destabilized by the lockdowns or destabilized by what's happening now, that there is a curiosity because there is a hunger. And when we feel life is easy or settled, or, you know, our concerns are like where to go on holiday, like there isn't the quest for seeking more from life. And I know, and I think that the beauty of this destabilization is that quest is like being ignited in people, and that's the way that we actually move into a much truer essence of what humanity is on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm interested I'd love you to share like this story. I'm so excited about it, especially this series of interviews that I'm doing about extraordinary women, and like this group of extraordinary women that you found and you've manifested Crescent Dale. And I know that in the last few years, there's been a lot of conversations around people getting their own land or growing their own food, or you know, getting off grid, or at least moving out of the cities. It's something I've done. And I know that doesn't feel attainable or accessible for everybody, but I think what you're doing at Crescent Dale is the way, not necessarily getting such a large piece of land, but the model of prayer and intention, rather than being at the forefront of the manifestation, rather than, you know, we do a vision board, we put it in the drawer, and then we get really stressed about searching online for things we can afford.
Yes.
Like, how you went about that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, well, the impulse came really from the People Speak Out group, which you now host sometimes, that I initiated back in early 2021. And a lot of people in there were starting to say about this idea of, you know, let's buy some land together, let's create an eco community. So I basically just put out a clarion call and kind of started building a database. And out of that, it was called Inner Sanctum. And out of that, it kind of spawned, there was a Scottish group and a Welsh group and a group down in Sussex. And I always said that I would lead a group in the Peak District where I live, somewhere close to Bakewell. And so we did the kind of classic thing of looking on Rightmove and looking on all the kind of platforms. And we found a farm and got quite a long way along with it, and built a sort of a group of about 33 people, actually, quite a magical number.
Yeah.
And we got all the way very close to actually acquiring it, but it fell through because of issues with the access to this farm. And we were advised not to go ahead. And the whole community kind of sort of collapsed like a souffle when you open the door of the oven. And but a small group of women kind of kept the flame alive. And so all we did was we met once a week, and we just kept kind of journeying and visioning and talking about what we did want. And we also did some kind of quite deep shamanic journeying. And there was one particular weekend where we went to Snowdon. This is actually a year ago, last weekend, very symbolically. And so it was at the Equinox. And the equinoxes are very powerful times, a bit like the solstices, very powerful times to do intention setting work. So after this weekend of deep shamanic journeying in Snowdonia, we took some of the offerings from the altar And the next day we went to Nine Ladies Stone Circle in Stanton in the Peak, which is very close to here, a very magical, mystical, ancient stone circle. And we were actually 9 ladies at that point. And we made this offering and we did some little singing and put some intentions into this, essentially this torus field of this amazing stone circle. And several weeks later, completely through left field from someone in our local stand in the park who knew the estate manager at Stanton, asked them if they had any land for sale. And they said, well, we don't have anything here, but we have something in Cressbrook, which we've had for years, donkey's years, and we've never really known what to do with. And would you be interested in that? So it took us a bit of time, and I got that the planets were all sort of difficult and retrograde at the time. And it wasn't until January this year that we finally got hold of the land registry map and went to see it. And it turned out to be basically half of a dale in the Peak District. And it's like a natural temple, natural limestone temple. And we just walked around it and just like, wow. Because I mean, I follow the property market up here in the Peak District, and you just never get a dale coming up for sale. I mean, it's just unheard of. So for us to suddenly be offered this, so of course we then said, well, we love it, but we need to crowdfund it. So could we possibly rent it and then buy it in a year, like have an option to buy it and then buy it in a year, so we've got time to raise the crowdfunding, because it takes time to gather that. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh no, don't worry, you can pay over 5 years. And so we said, oh, we don't think we'll need that long, maybe 2 years. So part of the negotiation was to actually pay over time. So it was almost like the universe was just blessing us, not only with the opportunity, but also all the blocks, which in your mind, oh my God, how are we going to afford that? Where's the money going to come from? It kind of like all the blocks were just moved away. And I do a lot of invocations to Ganesh, which helps as well. So we then just sort of put it out to a very small group, actually the kind of People Speak Out database that I built from Rachel Speaks Out. And we just got an initial group of people who we just got the ball rolling, and we did the acquisition. So we acquired this dale. I mean, it is literally like a natural temple, and it is most definitely a portal for magic and healing. So it's super exciting. It's also very well resourced. So it has its own natural spring. It has a kind of brook running through it. It has 50 acres of forest and 20 acres of pasture land, which is kind of south facing. So, there's potential to grow vegetables, in amongst the ecology there. So, I mean, it's an absolutely pristine, beautiful, natural site. So it's such a blessing to have manifested it and to have journeyed with it, because it's not until you actually journey with land, you sit with it and meditate with it, the land kind of reveals more of itself to you. It's a very beautiful. I'm very into feng shui, but this is kind of when you do shamanic work with land, it is a medicine for sure, working with land.
Oh, I hear you, and I have a few questions about Cressbrook, but to chime in, I've run retreats, generally wild retreats, where there's no running water, or there is, but it's not like I don't go to luxury bougie places. I kind of wish my medicine path was that, because I like those sorts of retreats. But I often I found that I want to hold a retreat, but then if the land is calling me, and it's when I've been on land that said you need to bring women here, or you need to bring people here, and it's like, oh, okay. And that's when I hold a retreat. And I haven't had that for a few years, but I've just had it with some land in Wales. And it's what I was thinking about you being in Wales this weekend. It's like you were a dragon in the den, and now you've been a dragon in Wales.
Amongst the druids.
Yeah. Different types of dragons. So yeah, this understanding of, and I think when we think of connecting to the land, we often think of other cultures, or we think of South America, or we think of indigenous peoples in hot land, and we don't think I've got an apple tree in my garden, or there's trees in my local park or the tree outside my office. We forget that actually all nature is, and we are nature, and we are
Yes.
devoid, and we don't have to go to lands where that language has been maintained, because we do have the druids, we do have all of that within us. And in fact, this land is crying out for us to come back and connect here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have been on those sort of pilgrimages to Peru 4 times. I've been out to Peru, and that's been amazing to be in the mountains, up in the Andes, mainly, apart from one time in the jungle. But this land is actually a valley. So the very interesting thing is that we realize, well, actually someone coined the phrase vagina valley. And it's just so appropriate because we're literally going into the mother. So for us to go to Snowdonia up the mountain, so a lot of mystics over time, like Moses and the prophets, Jesus, go up the mountain. So it's actually quite interesting to go into the valley, which is kind of going into the mother, going into the shadow. And I have last weekend, I had a massive healing around my mother, profound. And it was such a gift. And I get that the medicine of this land is really, you know, when you go into the land, into the earth I go, you know, so many teachings.
Yeah. And so much of the feminine mystery schools around like the labyrinth, the well, the valley. I'm doing a lot of womb work at the moment and dieting with a lot of like plants of this land, like the rose and lady's mantle and mugwort, and understanding these ways of healing and being in these energies that are available to us. But I'd love to come back to Cressbrook and because I know that like you're not planning to build homes on it. So what is your intention with the community? How are you going to be working with the land? What is if people are like, yeah, but why would I get land, or what, those sorts of questions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, originally we were looking for a farm, so a farm with outbuildings, maybe converted into holiday cottages. And so that was our kind of, that kind of classic model. So when Cressbrook Dale came along, and it literally is just the most magnificent piece of land. There's no buildings on it as such, although it is agricultural land. So we had to do a bit of a shift in our kind of thinking. So up till now, what we've done is we just kind of gone there and done projects really. And, so whoever's free on a certain day will go and will, for example, learn how to do dry stone walling, just to do some practical things. And we rebuilt some of the walls there. And equally, we've done some, like a cacao ceremony. We put a teepee on the land. And we've obviously camped on the land, and it's just so you learn so much just from sleeping on land, and the amazing dawn chorus, just absolutely incredible. So yeah, we've had to kind of let go of what we thought to allow in a kind of new magical possibility. But I also feel that, I do feel like things are changing. I've been looking at what Hoppy's been doing at Lammas in Wales, because they've got a planning policy in Wales, haven't they, about one planet development, where basically anyone who has land can do a sustainable living development. And so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that revolutionary planning policy, as they call it in Wales, as they called it at Lammas, not beyond the realms of possibility that could be adopted, because the whole of our life is shifting, isn't it, into doing things much more locally, being sustainable. Energy prices are soaring, like supplies of things being flown in from overseas. These things are not as sustainable as perhaps they once were. So it feels to me that in the future, there will be this drive to live and work the land, and to really know how to do that, and know how to forage, and how to grow organic vegetables, and no dig planting. I mean, I've learned so much, things like natural energy. So it's opened a whole world of knowledge, of of living and working the land, which we're not taught. That's the crazy thing. We're not taught that at school, how to plant vegetables and when vegetables are ripe, and things like organic cookery and natural herbs for healing. All of those things are very magical.
Yes. And exciting. And I mean, I think that, like thinking about children, like they love worms or frog spawn or growing cress, or because it's, and that purity that's alive in children is alive in adults. We just forget, or we're told we're too busy, or we don't prioritize it. And I'm not being naive that everybody has the time to do all these things, but within the community, when you start connecting with people in your locality, there will be people who are excited by that. And actually there's something maybe you're offering that they can have, and you can have some of the vegetables, and that kind of way of just not relying on the supermarket infrastructure for everything that you get.
Yeah, well, I think there's a bigger thing here, which is the system, which is the way things are set up, people's attachment to the system. And then there's this questioning of the system, which is, hold on a minute, like, do I have to go along with what's unfolding? Because I mean, you know that I speak out a lot, Helen, about, the kind of global corporate hostile takeover bid that's currently underway, because it's not beyond the realms of possibility that access to food, to give a simple example, is restricted or monitored or controlled in some way, in using a digital currency or digital ID, so that suddenly, if you're dependent on the big supermarkets, I mean, just look at what happened during the whole lockdown. Some supermarkets you couldn't go in unless you had a mask on, and it was going very close to this idea of not being able to go into places unless you'd had the Britney spear, as someone described it. I don't want to go down that route too much, because I know you're putting this out on YouTube, so I don't want you to get banned, Helen. But
thank you.
So I think a lot of people were sort of really, really questioning just how free we are, as free men and women of the land, just how free we are if we're completely dependent on a system which is increasingly digital.
Yes, in London yesterday.
Controlling.
Places taking cash.
Yeah, and cash is being phased out. And potentially, what if the money system, the plug is pulled on the money system? I think the pound crashed. I don't really follow mainstream media, but I think the pound crashed this week or last week.
Yeah.
So things are very unstable at the moment. So on a personal level, it feels really, really, there's a kind of base, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that base of that red base of that base chakra needs. If you've got land and you've got resources, you've got lots of wood, you've got natural water, you've got food, that covers a lot of base chakra needs. To have those covered off, there's something deeply settling about knowing that those needs are covered, and that maybe it's psychological, but I've noticed that there's this kind of feeling of relief that my base needs are covered, and for my family going forward.
Absolutely. And I think if people are listening to this and feeling slightly triggered and uneasy about that, the way that I think, well, I don't have the resources to get land, or I don't know at the time, or whatever that might be. It's like I don't have land, but I'll link a video I made to you about how to prep without fear. It's like I have a camping stove, I have loads of gas canisters, I've got loads of food that I can cook if things were to go down, I've got loads of cacao, and do you know what I mean? Like I'm blankets and candles and matches, and that's a couple of boxes worth of stuff in cupboards, and I know that I've got, and bottles of water, I know where my local spring is, I've got a straw for life. I can easily go a couple of months if everything was to
Yeah.
Boodle at the same time, and this is in the astrology, this sort of stop-start Uranian birthing the new world. It's in the astrology. The crash was predicted of the core, this financial instability we're going through now and in crypto. But I think the future's beautiful. I don't think the takeover bid will be successful. I think far too many people are questioning it and are aware, and there's far more of us to not make it divisional. But and why I think coming to the land is so important is because it is the consciousness of this planet that is shifting, and we're shifting with it. And so when we can connect to the land, we can find stability by getting into the frequency that the land has, because that's the future. That is in the here and now, and that's where we're going. And so then we will have, and that element of trust without naivety, like having the practicalities, but that trust taking us back into the root chakra. If our root is on the earth,
yeah,
and not our root in the media or our root in the collective fear soup, then we can find that stability.
Well, this is what I mean about this digital trap, about we're being lured into this kind of digital gulag of all things digital. And that's one of the, when we started doing Stand in the Park, the Stand in the Park movement is amazing. And I kind of initiated one in Bakewell in August 2021. And it's just so wonderful to meet people in person and to do things in person with people as opposed to via Zoom. And I mean, all these channels are amazing, but there's so much lost energetically, so much is lost via the digital world. So it's so important to keep that connection, that human connection, that nature connection, because it's exponentially so much greater than doing things digitally. There's so much more communication and energy and healing, and especially to do things when you do them in nature. So, and especially when you do them in a magical place or anywhere that's a temple or a ley line or somewhere like Crestbrookdale, which is like a natural temple, the results are exponential. And to me, that magic is super powerful. Yeah, that you just can't emulate through the digital media. It just doesn't. It's just not the same.
Yes, I totally concur. In lockdown, I started running workshops teaching people to speak with trees and connect them to their healing, and I did it, and it went to people all over the world, and it was great having people in America and Canada and Europe all coming together and then going off to connect to their local trees and coming back together again. But I was running one this weekend in Hampstead Heath in London with the ancient trees there, and to be in person was just another level. And it's wonderful to have had that experience and the benefits that we got from working out actually how we can communicate through Zoom when needed, but not as the main reality. And I know I've got some coaching clients whose companies still haven't gone back to, they live on their own and they haven't gone back to seeing their colleagues every day. Everybody is very happy doing remote working, apart from a lot of my clients who are deeply isolated and really don't want this to be the future.
Well, that is the thing, is that this isolation, this inversion, that is the danger of creating the lure of this digital trap, of creating division and isolation and loneliness and separation. Whereas, Helen, it's, those of us who are in this world of evolution, it's much more about unity consciousness, about coming together in circles, even if it's a tiny, small circle of people. It has superpower. Tiny circles of people. It doesn't have to be. This is one of the great sort of tricks of the kind of the mindset of the patriarchal system, is that it's got to be big to be effective. It's like you've got to have lots of, you've got to have thousands of followers or millions of followers or hundreds of people at your event. But actually, small, powerful groups, to me, that they hold a huge amount of magic. And so there's always that thing of, there's not enough people. but actually just a tiny group in a small mandala is amazing, can be really amazing.
Absolutely. A small group that goes deep rather
Yes.
than a big group that has less depth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Like your vagina valley. Although that is a it's a big group, big land. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's exactly 12/12 as I saw then.
My birthday.
Ah, what a magical birthday. So in summary, unless there's anything else that you want to add in at this point, what I'd really like to leave people with is a sense of to have absolute hope that we're going through a challenging winter potentially in the matrix, the 3D, the land that exists, the way the world works at the moment, in order for a new, much more positive future to come, and that you have absolute power and control and sovereignty in your own life and shaping the future you want by holding that vision. Just as, Rachel in your group, you didn't get derailed by the farm not going through. You didn't crumble like the souffle. You were like, well, not this, but better.
Mm.
And
That we
holding
kind of
that
knew that.
prayer.
We knew that there must be something, because we always said with that farm, oh, we wish it had woodland. Oh, it really needs some woodland. It really needs woodland. And of course, suddenly we've got like 50 acres of woodland now. So it's kind of like, wow. But one thing I just would say, Helen, is I'm sure your followers, or you've been following Pam Gregory, the astrologer, and I went to see her talk in Bournemouth, which was, if you watch her on YouTube and think she's powerful, seeing her in person, the transmission was just incredible. And she was basically saying that it is like we're birthing through. This is a metamorphosis. So it is like the pains of birth. But by March 2023, when Pluto moves into Aquarius for the first time and then retrogrades back, but it's the first time it goes out of Capricorn, it will be complete, the kind of collapse of the system. So we are in the final stages, and we're almost seeing the system desperately clinging on and trying to keep itself in place, whereas it's just like a cocoon that's just going to fall away as the butterfly. And we're like the butterflies, pushing, breaking out of the cocoon, exercising our wings, and really being called to stand in our truth, stand in our power, stand strong. As you say, adversity, like, bullying, intimidation, no, I'm standing strong in our sovereign power. So we're practicing this inner strength to be able to stand in the eye of the storm, no matter what's happening on the outside, and push. We're flexing our wings to fly. We're getting ready to fly. That's my sense of it. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that. And the sort of thinking about my own experience, and like the caterpillar to butterfly, like the last 2 years have felt very soup-like. But
yes,
we've been in that transformational, like, holding period. I know lots of people have felt really frustrated that things aren't moving forward enough, but my medicine is always like divine timing and trusting that my timing is not as good as the universe's, and it will happen, and holding that. And also that within this, yes, we can look at it all externally, but knowing that what is happening out here can come up for us. So as you talk about holding your sovereignty, it's like all these old, outdated aspects of ourselves, like, are trying to vie for, come back to the pub, or come back to this way of working, or no, you can't leave corporate, or whatever it might be that is trying to bring you down and keep you in the old world. Like, that's the inner battle that we have to face at this time. It's like really holding the faith and the trust that we are supported, and that we are needed, and we are the way showers of this new way.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, nature's showing us all the time that nature has its own pace, and you can't rush the spring. But so we are going into a kind of hibernation period. And I do sometimes wonder, sort of, to give them the benefit of the doubt, whether sort of Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and all the World Economic Forum, maybe they're all master shamans who've like engineered this incredible medicine ceremony of the past 2 years to kind of create this awakening, because that's what's that's what's actually happened. It sparked a massive awakening of consciousness. So it's either spectacularly backfired or it was their intention as master shaman. I
think, yeah. Sorry, in the cosmic scheme, the darkness serves the benefit, doesn't it? We live in a universe of polarity, and we need the darkness in order to have the the yin and the yang balance. We have to have that resistance to push against.
Yeah.
To find our strength. But I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have?
No, that's great. I was just that amuses me to think of them that way rather than satanically evil.
Yeah. Well, they can be both, can't they? Yeah, with whatever lens we see it through. Like as Pam Gregory says about astrology, all the energy has, it has its highest aspect and its lowest aspect.
Yeah. So amazing times anyway.
Oh, so exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting. And thank you for joining me today and the viewers, and sharing what you've been up to and your perspectives. Like, I know you've helped so many people over the last few years, so huge thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks for inviting me on.
Pleasure. Is there anything that you would like to share about Crestbrook, and help if people are like, oh, I would like to get in touch with you about that land in the future? I know that there's a wave opening in the future. Is there a good way for people to contact you?
Yeah, we're just doing the second wave at the moment, which is pretty much kind of complete. And so early next year, if anyone's interested in being involved as the sap is rising into next spring, we'll probably do our next wave. So if anyone's interested, then get in touch with me. My website is rachelelnaugh.com. So you might put a link in it.
And I'll put that link below. And if anybody needs to reach out to me for trees, cacao coaching, links are below.
Cool.
And and do feel free to like this video if it's resonated, share it to any people who you think may resonate. Maybe they're looking for their own land. Maybe you want to gather your own community and tribe like Rachel did. And please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you so much again, Rachel. And thank you everybody who's joined to watch this. Much love.
Lots of love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.